All right, greetings. My name is Gary Rainford. I'm the director of the Southwest Harbor Public Library, and I'm really excited to be here. It's been a couple of years since we've been in this exact iteration, and also welcome to all our online visitors. That's certainly new for us, and it's great to expand our reach and for this event. And I'm really excited to be able to introduce Gary Rainford, Swan's Island poet tonight. Gary will do some readings, and he also fields some questions and comments. Kate Pickup McMullen will help facilitate any of our online audience. So if you have any questions or comments in this hybrid event, we are recording this event, and we'll host it on our library's YouTube channel. We'll host this on the library's YouTube channel within a few days. In 2 weeks, just a quick ad for Marjorie Patlack. She's going to give a talk on More Than Meets the Eye, Exploring Nature and Loss on the Coast of Maine. She's a science writer living on the Scoodic Peninsula, and her memoir also mourned the loss of her mother from cancer and her sole sibling from ALS. Her book just received a national award from the National Society of Journalists and Authors. So, all right, well tonight, Gary Rainford, author of Salty Liquor and Liner Notes, and just published Adrift, The Loss and Life of Living with Dementia, published by North Country Press just this past month. Betsy Scholl, recent Maine Poet Laureate. His title of this book is stunning and precise in his reckoning with loss, while Gary's commitment to care also makes it quietly heroic. Gary has a book for sale. If anyone would like to purchase it after the event, and anyone online, Kate can send you a link to help you pay online if you have interest in purchasing a book. All right, well, thank you, Gary.
Thanks, George. Thank you. They say the time will come when my world will start to dim. The memories I make will no longer stay with me. They say the time will come when my mind no longer thrives. The thoughts of all I love will fade. Oh, but this moment I share with you is all that's real to me now. It'll help me carry on the rest of my days. Oh, when the last of me is gone, take comfort in the still. What my mind may not remember, my heart always will. Some of my first faded memories. On Sunday, walking down Atlantic Road, and an island neighbor pulled up beside me, and hadn't seen him all winter. And he said, "Gary, you didn't tell me you wrote a new book about your mother." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Adrift." I said, "Yes, Adrift." And he kind of looked at me from the driver's seat, and he sort of did the scale weighing with his hands, and he said, "Mother adrift?" And he's shaking his head. "Yeah, Alzheimer's. I see that." And he said, "Son adrift?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely, son adrift as well." Although Adrift is our narrative poems that tell the story of my mom's dementia and Alzheimer's, they're clearly my stories as well. Both of us couldn't reach our target. We were truly adrift. When he pulled away, I thought of this poem and to start with. Ken Kesey. "How's your mother?" Eileen shuffles over. "I'm signing the visitor log at the reception desk. You are Bobby's son, right?" "Yes," I reply. "I'm the youngest." I watch her slipping right out of the arms of two aides like a trust fall. I glance at the open staircase. Over 10 steps to the first landing, 45-degree slope. Bobby must have bounced twice before striking her head and calculate. I'm so glad she's all right. Eileen sighs. This is some one flew over the cuckoo's nest place. 1 minute you're glad, then you're mad, and then you're glad again, like you have no vote. I guess we're all walking in circles. Eileen seizes her quad cane, pats my hand, then shuffles off the scene. According to the Alzheimer's Association, by 2050, a little over 25 years from now, approximately 12.7 million people will be diagnosed with dementia. And I had to put that in perspective for myself because I just can't see what 12 million looks like, almost 13 million. Well, it turns out Maine has 1.3 million people in the whole state. And as a recovering New Yorker, New York City has 8.3 million. So New York City and Maine, the whole entire state combined, don't even come to the number that we're likely to be diagnosed with, who are likely to be diagnosed with in 25 years. One of the things that really bothers me about that is it's likely I'm going to be one of those people. All we want is love. You bring me light, says Bobby, my mother, as I guide a forkful of shredded egg sandwich to her lips. There's a familiar focus in her eyes and a clarity to her words, but neither lasts more than a wink. I do not want to watch my mother dying today, but we do not get to cherry pick when life needs or does not need us most. I never in a million years thought I would be taking care of my mom like I had. In 2017, her husband was not well and he needed a break. And they were not forthcoming with my mom's health or his own health for that matter. The fact that he reached out and asked me to take my mom from Florida up to Maine for a couple of weeks just so he could have a little rest told me a lot, at least about his condition. Then when I got down to Florida, I realized that my mom was in pretty bad shape too. And at the time, her clarity was just like my clarity, but then like a light switch, she could be as confused as you would imagine any state of confusion could be. So we were toggling those two areas. It just seemed like the only thing I could do was just lean into that experience because she needed help. That was September 2017. My stepfather died that December, and then I had mom back here in Maine that January. Compassion. I can't get them on my feet, Bobby grumbles when I ask about the shoes her sister sent. Double wide orthotics with Velcro closures. Velcro. Sit here, Mom, I can help. Undoing the zipper front of her raggedy sneakers, I ease them off her feet as if they are nuclear bombs, and the poodle print socks slide off too. My mother's ankles are thick slabs of marbled meat. Give me this one first, Mom. I wiggle the piggy that went to the market, wipe lint off her heels, applied lotion, even though touching her dry, cracked skin makes me want to gag. Press down, I instruct, pulling her socks back up and screwing on her new shoes. And I think of last offices, That custom of laying out the body of a dead person, jewelry removed, eyes closed, arms by their sides, bladder drained, body washed and dressed in a simple garment or shroud. Each shoe fits perfectly when Bobby toddles about the room to test them, amazed like a child's first steps. So, and I just said this out loud, I think this weekend as well. I believe that watching my mom deteriorate in the way she did, reopened some wounds inside that just, or a sadness inside that I hadn't been a part of in a really long time. And I got thinking about why that might be. And partly is, my grandfather had dementia, but he was in his 90s. So I kind of expect someone in their 90s to experience that kind of decline. But my mom was in her 70s. And it concerns me that my daughter, who's 15, that I might not know my daughter in 20 years because I'm 53. It scares me. A Dunkin' Donuts worldview. Look at my hands, Bobby spits. Jelly donut in a wobbly tailspin. The shock on her face tracks the sugar as it powders the table. What the hell? She looks at me. Are you a jelly donut? Is half empty or half full kind of lady? Half dead, she sneers at her hands trembling against her will. I wish I could travel back in time before the diagnosis. I would hold Bobby's hands steady, edit the scenes in her life that amount to Alzheimer's disease. Your imbalance is 80 years of caffeine, jelly donuts, in trouble, Mom. Why do you talk so foolish? She points as if I delivered an injustice greater than the lumps of dementia proteins eating away her thoughts. I'm the Three Stooges, Mom, I reply, but she is tottering for the emergency exit now, her brain on a collision course, with every green leaf turning brown, aware, yet not aware of the seasons. I came across, so I'm a teacher by profession. And so I think my first natural impulse is to teach or to instruct, perhaps. And in the beginning, I wanted to fill the gaps, the words that my mom was missing. I wanted to correct them so she could hear them, so that she could regain what she was losing. When she was having trouble with the stove, I wanted to run through the steps of how you start the stove and heat up your ravioli. But it wasn't working. She was frustrated. I'm frustrated. And during this time, I'm trying to understand, what is dementia? She hadn't had her Alzheimer diagnosis yet. And I came across information that really informed how I interacted with my mom, and it really made me able to just love her without having any expectations. And I'm just going to read just a couple of sentences, because it's this image that really helps me. And I've got a friend on the island who's suffering from some memory loss, and this helps me not try to correct her, but just to sort of lean into the moment and go with whatever is happening, so that, because that moment's the only thing that matters at this point. So this is from an essay that I wrote about my mom's dementia. I'm just a couple of sentences. Shipworms, and that's what helps me. I learned about shipworms and about amyloid plaques. Shipworms are worm-shaped, wood-boring, wood-feeding mollusks, similar to clams. Like termites, they drill into wood structures submerged in seawater, piers, docks, the bottoms of ships. Two rough, rotating shells on a shipworm's head are used to tunnel into wood, eating what it cuts and grinds away. Scavengers, destroyers. I imagine shipworms eating Bobby's brain, my mom's brain, bit by bit, like a honeydew nut. And, you know, if we don't get the plaque scraped off our teeth will rot. And there's, at the time at least, there is a new drug now that treats the amyloid plaques, but not when my mom needed it. And so it really helped me realize that when she lost those words, she was losing parts of her brain. When she couldn't heat up her ravioli, she was losing that portion of her brain. It was just gone. And there was nothing I could say or do or get any more frustrated than she must have already felt at that time to change it. So I just learned to kind of lean into it. Swimming hole. My life is blowing away, says Bobby, mug of hot chocolate shaking in her hands. Good for your soul, right? I reply, sidestepping her comment, focusing on instead on relishing the last few cocoa peppermint swallows. Absolutely, mister, she nods, takes another sip, then looks at Pat, a memory care neighbor, sitting with us in the common area. Pat is dozing, eyes heavy as maple syrup. This is my husband, Bobby says to Pat anyway. We're married, she demands. I call him my son, but we're married. It doesn't matter, Mom, I reassure her. But in my head, I say, it doesn't matter. It matters. This is Pat, my good friend. Bobby offers her mug to Pat, but she's still dozing. Bobby had a friend named Pat McLean, who remarried when I was a kid and became Pat McClaw. Wondering if she thinks this is the same Pat from Long Island, I ask, but Bobby says she never lived anywhere else except here, and doesn't know any other Pats. She's not home if you ever look in the back rooms. Bobby's thoughts derail. Who? I ask. My mother. Graham comes to visit, I say, hiding my surprise since Graham died when I was an 8th grade or 9th grade. What the hell am I talking about? Bobby sighs, sips the last bit of whipped cream, overturns her mug, dribs of chocolate spill, and we watch the confluence of sweet rivulets meander downstream and pool at the edge of the table. That was before I understood about the plaques, because then I stopped being surprised when my mom said things or reacted in ways that perhaps needed instruction, because they just didn't. So I wonder if there was such a thing as an identity meter, because like in that poem, my mom thought I was my dad, which was shocking. And there's a whole section of poems that deal with that confusion for both of us, because my dad left when I was 2, and she didn't like him very much. And so that's how our interaction was when I went to see my mom. But I was Gary for a bit, and then I was sometimes Scott, my middle brother, on this identity meter, and then sometimes I was Jerry, my oldest brother, and then I was just somebody who was familiar. She knew that I didn't know that I was her son, but she wasn't quite certain yet that I wasn't family. And then I was no longer family, and I became my dad, and then I was a stranger. I was prepared for that. I this tattoo, I got it when I was young. It's called the Queller of Wild Beasts. It represents the antagonism between the intellect and emotion. And I know intellectually what was going to happen. I knew that she was going to lose her thoughts and me, but there were parts that didn't click until the emotional part comes in. I don't think first, I don't think, or I think less than I feel. I feel much harder than my intellect allows me to. And so without that combination, it wasn't setting in. And so this wasn't entirely shocking, but it was hurtful. Filicide. It's cold, Bobby moans, while Rhonda washes her thighs with a warm hand towel. Let's get ready for your son, she redirects with a voice as melty as milk duds. Here's fresh pants and let's fix your hair. I don't have a son. Bobby pushes Rhonda's fingers aside. Intellectually, I was prepared to lose a parent. I just, in fact, was working with a client on a project. Let me just get to this next poem. And I was particularly unfocused. Maybe it was a computer project, and I had said to her that my dad just died 3 weeks ago today, and so and I'm cool with that because of the relationship I had with him. He had been sick for a really long time, nothing like my mom's disease, and she wrote me a little note, and it sort of stopped me in my tracks a little bit. She said that, you know, losing a parent is momentous. I was like, wow, that word momentous really captures, I think, the experience of losing my mom and my dad. It is momentous. It changes the way I think about tomorrow immediately without even being prepared for it. However, for me at least, my mom becoming the child, but me becoming the caretaker, the parent, that was so unnatural for me. And I put that on the level as my wife and I lost our first daughter 18 years ago. My mom becoming the child, me becoming the parent, was just as unnatural and just as unsettling in my heart as that experience. It's called tug of war. I'm supposed to be your mother. Bobby shifts in her chair, rubs rose petals between her fingers. But I'm not mother material anymore. I'm more like a little girl again who needs her own mother. But my mother has been dead for decades, and you're Gary, one of my sons, right? That was sort of in the beginning when it just started to happen. Save our ship. I'm dying again, says Bobby, buzzing like a hornet's nest. And then she cries, oh shit, when the phone falls off the table. Please don't go anywhere yet. Her voice begs the empty walls, which will never bring comfort or look familiar. I need my papers. Bobby doesn't mean to say papers, reaching for the phone hanging by its cord, whimpering fear, so real, I feel it too, a current of static electricity. Gary, are you still there? Mom, turn the phone around. I call out. You're talking into the wrong end. I'm sorry. I'm sorry what I've become. I didn't ever mean to be a bother to anybody, especially you. But how soon can you get here? Because I can't wait like you might think. I'm dying again. adult diaper rebellion. What's the matter, Mom? I say, alarmed at Bobby's whimpering and reluctance to talk. I don't know what happened, she sniffs. Whatever it is, we can fix it. I coo into the phone. I'm wet. I'm wet, she sobs again, elderly sobs of a child. And my bed's soaked too. Is it raining out? Yes, Mom, like cats and dogs. So I was just down at the ferry picking up my wife, and I ran into a neighbor who said she read my book last night. And she said one of the things she wants to call her lawyer about is how she is if she gets dementia, because there's some poems in here that talk about how you can't terminate your own life if you have dementia or Alzheimer's. It's not considered a terminal disease. And I disagree. I think Alzheimer's is terminal. There's no cure, no cure yet. I listed a few terminal cancers: pancreatic, lung, liver, brain. Those folks, have some other choices that people with Alzheimer's do not have. But I really do believe it's a cancer, and there's no cure, and you're not going to get better. I don't mean to bum you out. Life alert. Balancing a tray of coffee, hot chocolate, munchkins, and my laptop, I thumb the 4-digit code into the keypad that unlocks memory care. The door clicks, a light turns green, and Bobby is sleeping, sitting up in the common area. Other women at various stages of dementia and sickness there too. Carol picking at scrambled eggs and honeydew melon. Diane, trying not to be seen, covers her face with a napkin. Frances cradling a naked baby doll. The medtech, Denise, whose army son recently graduated boot camp, smiles, says hello, cheery as a bowl of candy red apples, and tells me how my mother dressed herself this morning, like she's learning instead of dying. Mom, I kiss her head and whisper, are you done with this life yet? Bobby's eyes open slowly. Spot the box of munchkins, and she replies, no, I'm trying to keep it. I would bring her chocolate donuts and munchkins whenever I went down there. So, where's the baby? There's the baby. There's a stripped down, lonesome version on the radio of Johnny Cash plucking a guitar. He growls, I keep my eyes wide open all the time. And then Dimpy tells anybody who will listen she has to go to the toilet. So I point out the bathroom again. Rose fills a glass of cranberry juice with leftover Brussels sprouts from lunch that looks like testicles floating in a laboratory beaker. Denise, passing by, taps my arm, sits across the room and spoons crushed pills mixed with grape jelly in Cora's mouth. She winces as if tasting a wedge of lemon for the first time. Bobby is looking down now, hands resting on the table. Animals, 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 silly animals, upended, splitting its binding, loose pages, dog-eared. It's as though Bobby is pondering, trying at once to conjure the past, predict the future, and escape the dreariest moments of her present confusion. She looks at me, a time-lapse video, 80 years compressed into seconds. Gary, she says, jolts of lightning in her voice, head jerking up, surprise and relief in her brown, starless eyes. Startled that I'm still sitting right beside her, sipping coffee. Peekaboo, Mom, I joke, for my benefit, then plant a kiss on her head. Sisterhood of the caring. I'm Teresa Goodrich, she says, relaxing on a bench in the corridor, sipping apple juice. Teresa is Bobby's age, but there's a jewel in her eyes that Bobby doesn't have anymore. Look at you all spiffy today. She lifts a red Solo cup at Bobby, who replies with zigzags of disordered syllables. Your mother was naked, except for her smile, when she came out yesterday for breakfast, says Teresa. But I got her situated. Isn't that right, Bobs? Teresa makes another toast. Thank you, I reply, a pang of sadness rippling through me. I want to comment on the fellowship here. Old ladies helping old ladies. But like Bobby, I can't find the right words. Or maybe words don't matter as much as helping each other. So I'm driving home on the 95, and I don't remember where I'm coming from. I'm driving north, and I'm just outside Bangor, and I have a choice. I'm always worried about catching the ferry home, or not catching it home, or I can go stop and see my mom. She was I had her in an assisted living near the airport at Winterberry Heights. And I remember just sort of like a mantra came to me, and I said, and this was sort of after I stopped at Bobby's to kiss her head, because in each of us is all of us. In each of us is all of us. And I didn't take that exit for the 187 to shoot down Ellsworth to come down here to grab the ferry, because I just felt like, I need to do that because it's as much for me as it is for her. Even though at that point, she really didn't know who I was anymore, but it was important because her skin was still my skin. Wonder Woman. Sheila from Beacon Hospice sticks her head around the corner. Come in. Bobby's voice is small. I'm still here. You're an amazing woman. Sheila squeezes Bobby's feet over the covers, then both legs, then a twig of a shoulder poking out from under the blanket. And then Sheila's lips land on Bobby's forehead. If I cracked my head like you, honey, Sheila pulls a blouse off a hanger from the closet, I'd be in traction. Sheila glances at Debbie, Bobby's caseworker, and raises her eyebrows at the miracle of walking away from St. Joe's emergency room after falling down a flight of stairs. How do you feel? Not all that amazing. Bobby turns, looks at me reclined on the motorized lift chair by the bed. Maybe that's the key to life, not knowing how amazing we are. I joke, but I'm deadly serious. I'm going to end with this last piece. This poem, so you really kind of have to read the book. It's not a plug necessarily, but I didn't have the greatest relationship with my mother. She really didn't like me. She loved me, but I think we were too alike for her to like to be in my company. We had a great relationship when we could talk on the telephone whenever we wanted. In fact, it took about a year after she passed, then I started doing something, and I had a thought or I have an experience, and I'm like, I gotta call my mom and share that with her. I think, damn it, it's just not a possibility. And I moved out of my house when I was 17, and I never went back. And I'm the baby, and somehow my mom's care became my responsibility, and I'm grateful for that experience. And every time, and I would go up to Winterberry Heights at least once a week. I tried to make it twice a week for the time that she was up there, and it was hard because she wasn't happy to see me. She was mean when she saw me, especially when I was my dad. But we did have a couple of tender moments, and this was a real tender moment. And it got to a point in her decline where I just couldn't understand why she was still alive. And I have in the beginning of the book, I dedicate this book to my mom, who was afraid to live and who was afraid to die. She really she was not a very happy woman. She loved to laugh, but she just, that was not her baseline. There's a lot of sadness there. So center point, Bobby toddles from the bed to the closet, to the bathroom, to the end table, to the dresser, to the bed again, red-eyed from sobbing. Mom, please. I kiss her head, coaxing the dead to stop living. You have my consent if you need it. Then she hugs me even tighter, saying nothing. And she rubs my back, small circles, no endings, no beginnings. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Any questions or comments?
Thanks. I pulled out a poem called Matricide to go along with the Filicide poem, just because I didn't want to bring a group down too much. But I really, my aunt had texted one day and said that you're going to heaven, faster. You're passing stuff that on the way that you perhaps would have had gotten bogged down with had you not cared for your mom like that. And the poem talks. It's a long poem. I was shocked, but it's everybody. It's all these people who killed their mother, and I at the end text back to Aunt Shirley that no, I'm not going to heaven. What I need is I don't need salvation. What I need is therapy. Is what I need. And I don't feel like what I did was heroic. I feel like, what do you do? What
Just do it.
You're left with a parent or a loved one or someone you care about who needs you. How do you turn your back and continue living your life? I don't think I wouldn't have been able to, so I did it. I did it. Yes.
I'm not sure my mom passed away last year. I know I should have wanted to fly. But in the latter years, she went through this dementia aspect. Now we're diagnosed as Alzheimer. The virus but I studied with her many a night when she was probably some sort of a transition, and she would would ask me, am I dying? And I said, Mom, we're all dying. I said, but it's in God's hands. Started it. I said, don't have to worry about it. So I remember one night I sat with her and she was actually counting her respiration. She was pulling a knife. She opens her eyes and she looks at me and she says, Richard, I don't know how to die.
Yeah.
I said, when I get in the fire, next when they were the physician, next thing I went, I said, have you ever had a patient tell you that she did not know how to die?
Yeah.
And he said, no.
Well, yeah, that's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
but I just kept going to my head. Pretty much enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing how those moments of lucidity just strike. My mom hadn't eaten for or drank any liquid for nearly 2 weeks. And when I moved my mom from Florida, we had Max. And then Max was too much for my mom in the facility to handle. And my aunt bought Robot Max. And we transitioned Robot Max from real Max. And it, you know, in the beginning it was tough, but as my mom continued to deteriorate, Robot Max became, you know, a comfort, and she loved it. And it seemed like she was convinced that this was real Max because she wanted me to take it to the vet because it wasn't eating, and she wanted me to, you know, and it wasn't going to the bathroom as much as it should. And so she really did at a point, or at least had me convinced. I think herself as well. But then, you know, a few days before she passed, she had a couple moments kind of like, and my mom's eyes just sort of, I could see a bit of light that hadn't been there for quite a while. And she says, and she can't speak hardly, and she says in this gravelly tone, I knew that wasn't, I knew Robot Max wasn't real Max. And I thought, oh shit.
I had the same story. The same story. My mother had the little dog, Honey. She made me go to the store to buy Honey a wrap because she was cold, and she wasn't like a child. And then one day out of the blue, she said, you know, I know she's
Yeah. I tried to, this is hard this time. This book is a bit bigger than my other books. And when I do readings, I always try to tell a story through the poems. And Salty Liquor and Liner Notes, I always ended up telling the same story using different poems, just so that it was a little bit, so I wasn't kind of traveling over the same ground for myself. But Adrift, there's so many different stories that I wanted to tell. And maybe it's because of COVID, but I've been lining up and getting requests to be guests on podcasts. And that just wasn't even on my radar I guess it was in 2017 when Liner Notes came out. And it's been kind of fun because I get to tell different stories. And when I do library readings, I was at a library once and I had my whole like set planned out. And there was one that had a derogatory word, and it was really an adult poem. But there was a young person in the audience, and I prefaced before I said it, and the mother said, no, it's okay, you know, she's an adult. And I felt so uncomfortable. I said, I'm never going to read a poem that has an expletive in it ever again because of that reason. And it turns out, you know, because I cut those pieces out, I ended up telling a different story. And so it's just really nice that I have some new opportunities to tell different stories that I feel good sharing them. And thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Started your opportunity singing that beautiful song, and it ended when you said you can always remember with the heart.
I do. In fact, I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago while I was exercising, and it was shocking to me that up until the 1980s, and I was interested in this because my daughter, who's 15, was in the NICU for at least a week. I want to say she was in there for 3 months because that's how it felt, but she was in there for at least a week. And she had procedures done to her and just needle pricks on her heel that just seemed barbaric. And I thought, oh, and I remember the nurses telling me, it's fine, she doesn't know, she'll never remember this, it's not painful. And then the podcast was talking how they would do open heart surgery on preterm infants. And they said the brain's not developed enough to know that there's pain involved in this activity up until the 80s. And somebody finally said no. And to prove it, they started observing the heart rate and how it was so absolutely elevated. And then they tested something in the body. I'm so not a medical doctor, anybody. I'll tell you where to place commas, not the language to tell this story, but you get where I'm going. And so they finally discovered that the brain certainly is not developed enough to feel pain like you and I do, but the receptors in our skin are so sensitive and so totally feeling that experience. And so, yes, I do that. I feel, my heart feels that. And in fact, I told Aunt Franny, she would call my mom's sister-in-law. She would call pretty regularly. And Aunt Franny was like 20 years older than my mom, or 15 years older. Loved to boast about still driving. And she said that, I knew I was going to lose my train of thought. She said that moments like this where I think, oh shit, starting early. I told Aunt Fran, and she said kind of like what you just said, a good son for doing what you did. And Aunt Franny would remind me. And I said to her that, I know what she wants to say when she can't find the words. And that's not because of any intellectual position that I'm projecting on my mom. That was totally a skin to skin, a family to family, a DNA sharing kind of experience. So yeah, I totally believe that. In fact, I remember in graduate school, this argument with a professor who insisted that when I write critical essays, when I'm breaking down pieces of literature, that I don't say, I feel this way about X, Y, and Z. You think this about X, Y, and Z. I said, no, I feel this way. He goes, no, you think first, and then you have feelings. And I dropped it because I'm a path of least resistance most of the time type of a person. But I disagree. I at least feel more intensely than my thoughts. My thoughts take a long time to catch up with how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Thanks again, everybody.